I'm Kevin Little. I work for the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce, and I appreciate the opportunity just to say a few words about a project that we're working on that I hope is of interest to you guys. I'll give you a little background on kind of how it started, but then I'll turn things over to Zach, who's serving as kind of the lead contact on the development side in case you're interested in finding ways to plug in. But the project is called Maddie, and it originated from a group called Madisonium. I don't know how many people here are familiar with that group, but they're another local group that's focused on trying to build the tech ecosystem here. And one of the problems that they identified they were working to solve was, it's hard enough for people that live in this community to get really connected, but it's really hard if you're new to the area or a visitor. All of you found this meetup on the third floor here at Drifty, and that's cool, but there's a lot of other things going around tonight too, and our organization and other organizations have things going on, and unless you know all the different places to look, it becomes really complicated. So the idea became, if we had a centralized place to have things related to startups and business, but also a way to filter through all the crap and really have things tailored specifically to your interests. So a project got started, and again, it spun out of the Madisonium volunteer group. And the guys at Murphy really were behind the early development of it, gave a lot of their time and resources building the code behind it. Our organization put some resources into it as well. And the outcome was www.meetmaddie.com. That's MADI.com. You can also find it at maddie.sn. We had to go through the Senegal government to get that one. But what the guys developing this were able to accomplish is they built an algorithm, and it works, where you log in using a social media platform, and then based on your connections and your interests, and hopefully the more that you use the site, it will filter through the different events that are posted on Maddie and recommend things for you. So you and I were connected on one of those, maybe LinkedIn. You log in, I'm already indicating that I'm attending this meetup. This meetup would probably rise through all the different things and say, hey, this may be of interest to you. So the cool components of it are, they're a good way to promote things that are happening, and a good way to get connected, and a good way also as a storytelling device to kind of see what we all know. There's a lot of really interesting things that are happening here. So we got through that first phase. It is very much in an early stage. Again, we know the algorithm works, but if you log on now, you're not going to see a lot of content. There's a lot of bugs that need to be fixed, and we have continue to have kind of ambitious ideas for what this could be, not only in terms of just being a calendar, but being a place where you can register, a place where there'll be a lot of content, news and updates, ways to share information. So we have a lot of great ideas behind it, but as I mentioned at the beginning, it's completely open. It's not owned by anybody, and so in order for us to continue to build upon what we've already started, we need help, and we really need help on the development side. And so that's where I'll turn things over to Zach, who's been helpful on that. He'll hopefully tell you some ways if you're interested in learning more about the project or finding ways to plug in and help us with it. Zach can tell you more.
Hey, would someone mind muting you guys? Who's that? Thank you so much. It's a very loud echo over here if it's not muted. So yeah, I guess I'll just start off by telling you guys, like Kevin said, I think, really appreciate the time to kind of chat with you guys and tell you what the project is about. So I'm Zach Foster. I'm an ex-Murphy developer, and I'm now at Welby in Madison, and I'm kind of functioning as the kind of curator of the development side of this thing. And so, like Kevin said, it's an amazing resource for Madisonians to stay connected in the sort of tech startup business innovation end of things. And the coolest thing about that is that by being connected, we can, develop this thing with each other forward, built by Madison for Madison. And so there's a lot of work that could be done for the staff. We're pretty far along, but there are things like exposing data to the Chamber of Commerce is something that we need to work on soon. things like live running of events right now, maybe schedule some hackathons and then we'll use Maddie for them. We need some kind of this is actually probably one of the most important things right now is this sort of a way to kind of inject an event widget into people's blogs or other people's personal websites. And I think that'd be a pretty cool thing to work on, especially because we already have a really good template built for it, but it's a little bare bones and doesn't quite have the full list. And so there's tons of other stuff to work on. I have a full list on the GitHub repo, which I think Kevin can maybe show everyone to. So if you have any questions, it's super easy to just get in contact with me by email. Email is not zachfoster@gmail.com. And Kevin could also help you with the spelling of that. But if anyone has any questions or whatnot, feel free to check out the GitHub repo, submit an issue. If you have a change you'd like to make, just submit a pull request. We'll take a look and we'll get back to you.
So any questions for probably more towards Zach on the technical side, but happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Also, since you're muted, I can't hear anything.
And then I'm sorry to be the guy who speaks and then ditches, but fun fact about me is I have twin toddlers, and at the moment they're sick twin toddlers, and I'm going to be in big trouble if I don't get home and help out with that. So, but I'll leave a bunch of business cards. If anybody's interested in learning more, again, we're just looking for help. If you're interested in learning more and connected, just please ping me and we'll find something for you to do. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
Should I post
Yeah, thank you guys.
post you guys' email if people have any questions or?
Yeah, that'd be great. I can chat it to you.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Also, I'll send you the GitHub repo.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll post that on the Meetup page. So, thanks. So there's a lot of people here. Not that many beers though, actually. I kind of made the BYOB notes and people are surprisingly dry. Oh, okay, something good. Alright. You guys don't have to be shy, if you want to sit on the floor, there are a lot of, normally with these meetups, not as high a percentage of people who say they're going to come actually do come. So does anyone have a preference on, we have a couple of people, it's kind of a show and tell. It's a bit more of a casual, just show what you're working on and we'll talk about it and say, how'd you do that? And then just kind of devolve into a
helps you work on your core.
happy hour. But does anyone want to just go first? Any guest speakers? All right. What do you have for a computer? I have a Mac. You have a Mac. All right. Sweet.
Hi everyone. So my name is Beermann. I used to live here in Madison. Moved out to San Francisco about 2 years ago with a local startup called Study Blue. I was there for another year and ended up leaving. And joined another local company called Gilware, and things have been going great. But as happens, got really interested in a side project that I've been working on for about 3 months with someone. We're actually building it on top of Ionic. So I'm really excited to show people. This is actually the first time anyone in the public has seen what we're doing. So I'm very interested in hearing feedback and welcome any criticisms about where you guys think we're going on. This is a new venture that literally was incorporated last week. And it's going to be our full-time gig starting.
I think it freaked out because, or if you just try airplane again, it should go back. That's the kitchen
really curious. I will not try to invade anyone's privacy with this question, but we are creating a mental health application. We want to target people who have anxiety. And one of the things that we found is that this is a problem that actually affects a very large portion of the populace, as much as 40 million adults in the US. And if anyone is willing to say, I'm not going to push anyone, are there people in here that feel like they struggle with anxiety on a daily basis? We really think that there is an opportunity here to address a market that is currently unaddressed, particularly because of the stigmas around anxiety. Of those 40 million people that suffer from it, about 30% of them are actually seeking care. So we're really interested in providing an application that is going to help people begin to address their anxiety. It's not something we ever expected. It's not something that you can cure. But we're really excited about an opportunity to help remove some of the stigmas around this and really begin to bring mental health to the forefront of how we think about our daily lives and the care that we're seeking. So, let's see if this actually wants to run. Our company is called Pacifica App. The product we're creating off the bat is called Pacifica. Chris, my co-founder, lives in Pacifica, California. I live in San Francisco. So, what nor all the very beta-y kind of things, like the video that doesn't loop cleanly and some of the misplaced icons that you get to see. But what we're really excited about is we built this on Ionic. We believe that PhoneGap put over a huge opportunity to open up web development, open up mobile development to a much greater audience. I'm sure Max and all the Drifty guys here are absolutely on board with that. So we've done some cool things. Max, I haven't even talked to you in the last 2 months, but we're pretty excited to show off some of this stuff. So hopefully we don't run into some really awful bugs along the way. There's a little spacing issue here. So this is our user experience. It's trying to walk you through what exactly we're trying to accomplish. There are a lot of missing parts for wizards and experiences that guide you through the product. So it's mostly the feature set that I'm going to be showing off today. At the core, one of the things we're trying to do is gauge how bad is your anxiety. And this is a very fluid thing for people. I don't know exactly if it's the airplay
the
that's
screen.
showing off.
So if you just go to window,
Like you can scale the window.
yeah, window scale, and then just step it down to like maybe 75 or so. Much better.
I've never learned as much about a particular topic as I think I have about the past 2 months. There's something called JD2. It's a little quiz you take that helps gauge whether or not you have general anxiety disorder. So this is actually walking you through that process. How bad is your anxiety? How often are you overwhelmed with worry? And based on your answers, we can actually gauge, do you have mild, moderate, severe anxiety? And we're going to build schedules around this that help you start to maintain that and start to cope with where you're going. One of the things that therapists really do with people with anxiety is building goals around what they want to do. Behind the scenes, we're really trying to distill a lot of the science away from the user experience. The top selection here relates to general anxiety disorder. This relates to social anxiety, and this relates to panic disorder. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that we really work to distill down into sort of the essence of what it is that people really want to know. Nobody cares that I have, this particular classification of an anxiety disorder. They just want to figure out how to fix it. So, at the core of what it takes to solve or to address your anxiety or building daily habits, we're building this on something called cognitive behavioral therapy. So there's a cognitive aspect that helps you analyze your thoughts. And there eventually will be a behavioral part, which is the experiment project that we haven't built quite yet. It basically takes the learning that you've applied to your anxiety and helps you go through the experiential part of it, actually address your anxieties in the moment with the knowledge of how that you've learned along the way. So this is all very subject to change. We're actually thinking that we might pare back some of the application to these core breathe and rethink portions, but I'm going to walk through it in the way that it's currently designed. So it's a basic tracking application. We want to be able to track what is your mood on a regular basis, and these can be done several times throughout the day. Similarly, there are a lot of things that affect people's anxiety. How much coffee are you drinking during the day? We're not getting too complex. We don't want to really track how late you're drinking it. We think that getting the idea of addressing some of these factors that are playing into your anxiety is more important than being really specific around when exactly they're happening. And you can add some other things. Eventually, you'll be able to provide your own daily activities that you want to track. And these are all customizable. And this Xcode 6 messed up a whole bunch of stuff, so I'll apologize with the fact that the spinner doesn't show up there. I don't actually know why. One of the, to shout out to Ionic, the part that has been really easy about this is Chris and I come from a web development background, and putting this, we've done this in our spare time in the last 2 to 3 months. This is a fully functional application, complete backend. The ability to use some of the core building blocks of Ionic has been one of the things that made that really easy. We're not writing a whole lot of Objective-C. There have been a few cases where I've had to write some of the plugins, but this is almost entirely stock Ionic. You'll notice that the styles are totally different. We have our own look and feel, so we've overridden a lot of the stuff that you would get out of the box there. But, the building blocks are what have been really easy. Those are simple things like the modals, the pop-ups, the sliding effect. You have to futz around a lot when you want to get things to work like a background video, but it's all possible. You just have to know what the exact right little push is to do it. So, okay, so daily habits, core building blocks for anxiety. In the moment, we need to teach you how to actually manage your anxiety. You're never going to be able to, if you're having a panic attack, you're never going to be able to like step outside of that and start thinking, oh, like, what am I thinking wrong in the moment? You have to like build all those building blocks up to get there. First of all, how is it that I start coping with it? And only then can you start stepping outside of that voice in your head and being able to actually address it. So the breathe exercise is very simple. It's a guided exercise based on deep belly breathing. We'll actually, the simulator, I don't know what is going on here, but the simulator doesn't work in the right time. It works correctly everywhere else. It works on the web, it works on the phone. The simulator is a pilot tab. Yeah, so I'll probably hack something in there that actually. So this is basically the longest inhale you could ever just wait till the exhale is even longer. So everyone's about to pass out.
It's relaxing.
If this was better, you can kind of see where it's going. It's actually designed around a process that dates all the way back to Buddhist meditation. Specifically, you're trying to relax a nerve in your spinal cord called the vagus nerve, and in doing so, actually enables you to pull your heart rate back to match your breathing rate, which obviously slows you down and calms you. If it worked, it would be a lot cooler.
Are those seconds zero then?
Yeah. Yeah, so the default is 10 seconds, it's 4 on, 6 off. And then rethink, this is where I think what we're doing actually really shines. Everyone knows what the kind of typical therapist looks like, because everyone needs it over there. Typically you're gonna sit in, if you have a therapist, you would sit in their office and you would go through the talk therapy session and kind of recall what happened over the past week or the past month. We want to provide that ability on your phone. So we're we're going to try to walk you through a set of questions that are going to help you go through a period in which you were anxious. And really, this is just getting you to talk a lot about it. It's the talk therapy aspect of where a therapist really fits in. The whole time we're recording your voice, we actually have some really cool speech recognition stuff using the Open Ears platform. There's some funkiness with multiple audio channels on iOS that's not working correctly, so we kind of dropped it for the time being. But you can actually trigger a lot of stuff based on what exactly it is you're saying and really analyzing it. So let's say it took 38 seconds and I talked through exactly what it is. Now we want to put you in a different mindset. We want to say, let's think about your best friend telling you a situation where they were anxious. And we can do so. This is all built on web audio. You can do some really cool stuff with modulating their voice, trying to really remove them from the mental connection that this is them talking about it. And as we're playing this back to them, obviously there's audio and everything, as we're playing this back to them, you're listening to it from an external perspective. It's like, oh, that was a really misplaced emotion. And we're trying to help you understand how exactly those emotions are misplaced. And there's some examples here about, what exactly are the types of things that go through people's minds. The really exciting thing is we're not inventing anything new. Cognitive behavioral therapy has been around for a couple of decades. We're providing a little bit different take on it, built around mostly audio, the ability to record and play back what you're doing, and really provide a personalization that we think is going to be applicable to the people who are kind of, if you think of anxiety on a scale from 0 to 10, maybe the people 7 and over are currently going to the therapist. Well, people from 0 to 7 struggle with anxiety on a daily basis as well, and we think that effectively we can make this a part of a lot of people's daily lives and really help people get over some of the things that they deal with. And a good example of that, because I think having the connection is important. My girlfriend, she probably hate if I was telling this to a group of people, but she hates driving. One of my best friends can't drive across a bridge right now. And these are very normal things that people struggle with, but they're not going to go to a therapist to fix this. Well, how do you overcome some of those anxieties? And that's what we're really trying to target here. So as you play through this, you can flag multiple places, you can give multiple things. And then the last part of it is once you have that understanding of where your emotions are misplaced, we want to walk you through the reflective process. Okay, well, let's leave a message for yourself for the future. How would you learn from this moving forward? And give you an opportunity to really, obviously this 3-step process, give you an ability to try to overcome it as best you can. So, that's it. We're hoping to launch probably in the next month to 2 months. We really think there's a good opportunity here to bring mental health into the forefront of how people address their daily lives. And to be perfectly honest, we probably couldn't have been here if we hadn't built it using Ionic. So, very exciting. Questions?
What did you get away from?
There's a project called Wavesurfer that does web audio-based audio buffer decoding that actually analyzes it for you. So almost everything you see here is pretty stock HTML5 stuff. It's not native, which, in all honesty, I think is pretty amazing. I mean, if anyone can point out exactly where it looks like this is phone gap, I would love to hear it.
What are you using the backend?
We're,
What are you using the backend?
it's all Java built on Drop Wizard. Okay. So JDBI for the database interaction, Jersey for web services. Actually, let's see if I can pull that up quickly. I am fairly opinionated when it comes to backend architectures, and I think that too many people do what I would like to call premature architecture. It's a premature optimization version of how you build out your backend. We have account resources, your web service interface for anything account related. And pretty much everything is a single step from the database interaction. Our account manager, this is where we're going to create an account. And the way JDBI works is it's actually either an interface or an abstract class, and it handles out building out the definition behind it. So you can define, this is an abstract implementation, but you can define core or actual implementations for higher level functionality that maybe doesn't do direct interaction. You can build transactions around it. And then the lower level stuff is all annotated with the basic SQL injection right there. I've done every Java backend possible. I really think that this is a good middle ground between some of the like hardcore ORMs like JPA, which you just end up fighting with, and they actually imply how you should be building your schema, which I think is the opposite of how it should work. And obviously using direct JDBC is the polar opposite of that, and I think this sits right in the middle of those things very effectively.
Are you familiar with Ed Finkler? He gave a presentation at the PHP conference about his own struggle with mental health issues, trying to make people more aware of the subject in the tech world. It was a great talk that he gave.
So I've started companies before. I've been through the manic roller coaster that is a startup, and there is a huge depression problem in our industry. It's actually in the last few months has really seen the light of day. Obviously, a lot of this was really starting to come to the forefront with Aaron Schwartz, and a lot of what was going on with his struggle to fight mental illness and all that. Yeah, I think it's a very realistic problem, or real problem that can be addressed. If you look at mental health issues as a matrix in terms of what's really popular, what's really effective, cognitive behavioral therapy is super effective but not really well known. Paired alongside treatment through a mental health care professional, or you're taking particular psychiatric drug, it's incredibly effective. We think there's a good opportunity to provide this as an adjunct for professional care as well, where we're providing a lot of this data to them, the daily tracking and the recordings that can be analyzed on an ongoing basis. I think one of the problems being that weekly recall is really difficult, trying to go over what happened there.
Are you working with any mental health professionals?
We are. There's a researcher at UCSF that we're working with, mostly for some very high-level stuff. So we're gonna look at doing some much more rigorous categorization of what mental health looks like in terms of, basically statistical clustering around what's going to be daily tracking.
Can you talk about the plugin that you had to dip down and do in Objective-C?
Yeah, so that was actually OpenEars. OpenEars does not provide. OpenEars is an open source speech recognition and text-to-speech project for iOS. They also do a bunch of for-sale plugins for their own thing. They didn't have a plugin for it. I kind of found one on GitHub and adapted it for our own use. It's incredibly straightforward to write a Cordova plugin. I think, for anyone here who's a web developer, you need to learn a very minimal amount of Objective-C if you want to extend the Cordova platform to be able to use customized stuff.
One more question. Can you talk a little bit about the back end? You said Jersey, and what was the other DB product?
So go look up Drop Wizard.
Drop Wizard.
There's a guy, Coda Hale, who's actually, I think it's LinkedIn. He developed this metrics package that got really big and sort of went with that and developed this whole open source packaging of tools that provide a little ecosystem around how to create Java-based backends. Very, very effective, very lightweight, very good for rapid development.
What's Drop Wizard is a server or just a framework?
No, Drop Wizard is the framework. It's actually running on a Jetty server.
Jetty server. Okay.
Did you specifically choose that one? Or was no?
I personally believe very strongly in strong types backends.
For the, you said you're doing speech to text.
We will be, yes.
Have you ever run the rules speech to text?
iOS doesn't support it. You can do some web-based stuff. This needs to run offline.
You can do it entirely JavaScript.
Only if the WebKit implementation supports it. I don't think it does in iOS 7.
There's
I want to know it.
no, there, I had a curl app that used all entirely JavaScript.
Cool. Now let's chat later.
I assume this needs to be kind of done on a very regular basis to be really effective, right?
Surprisingly, no.
Right.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, I mean, yes, regularly, but it depends on your definition of regularly. Cognitive behavioral therapy is about an 8-week program, and you need to put in somewhere between 15 and 20 hours for those 8 weeks.
Okay. So you're hoping for people to put in that kind of time over that kind of time period on your app.
Well, we're going for a little different, so that's typical cognitive behavioral therapy when implemented by a therapist. That includes your hour-long sessions with them. We're going for something a little different that is very incremental improvements in helping you down that path when it's seeing where your emotions are misplaced. Nothing like this exists, so we will be, in the far future, we will be doing clinical trials around what exactly the effect this has on people's mental health.
I'm curious then, do you have a target at all for how often you want people to check in with it?
Daily. Whether or not you're doing the breathe and rethink portions are kind of up to the individual user, but I think that, obviously daily habits part requires you to log in daily, so. It really depends on the person. I think a lot of people only struggle with anxiety in particular situations. If that happens every time you're driving to work or getting on the train to go to work, well, maybe you should take 5 minutes once you get to work and
So that being said, is the app going to reach out to you and ask you how you're doing?
We have optional scheduling, where you'll get push notifications to come in and perform whatever it is that is in the scheduling.
Do you want to integrate with healthcare?
We will. I think it's just going to be a necessity moving forward. I feel like I've taken a lot of time. I really want to give the floor to someone else and happy to answer questions.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you guys. I will finish with, please, if you have any thoughts, come grab me afterwards. I'd love to hear what people think about this. Like I said, is the first time anyone has ever seen this. Thank you.
Now I have anxiety.
Who wants to go next? You want to go? Sure. On the right network and stuff. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So before you get started, there's some more room. There's at least like 4 or more places to sit up here. So, so you guys in the middle, please don't have to be. So there's couch, chair. Cool.
Hi, my name's Ethan. Ethan Jewett. Software developer, data person. I am a member of Work 100 State, whichever direction that is, so that's where I usually work. One of the projects I work on is called Palladio, and it's a project out of a research lab at Stanford called Humanities Plus Design. I work as a consultant for them, and it's an application that is actually not really an application. It's more of a research project. It's funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the idea is to come up with tools for humanities to help humanities scholars visualize the types of data that they're working on. That might be data about literature, or actually more often in our case, data that historians have compiled about whatever they happen to be studying, so whatever historical period they happen to be studying. Especially of interest are networks of people and of correspondence in various historical periods. So we built an application as kind of a test bed for some of this research around visualizations of this particular type of data. You can get to it if you just Google Palladio Stanford. That's probably your best option. Palladio is also a casino in Las Vegas, so just Googling Palladio won't get you there. Or you can go to palladio.designhumanities.org. That's where the actual application lives. It is, and I should actually just plug really quick. We actually have a great group of people that are working on it. Our lead designer is Giorgio Caviglia, who's a completely awesome designer, and anything you see as far as like this application working really well, looking really good, is his fault, not mine. I built some initial prototypes and they were terrible, but he fixed everything up. So Palladio, the basic idea is you can load in data to it in CSV format or through actually a Sparkle endpoint. But usually people are using CSV, they're doing Excel, and they're copy and pasting it out into the browser. And then once you get your data in and kind of categorized and linked together, you can view your data in several ways. A map view, we're using leaflet.js for that. A graph view, most of the visualizations are built on D3. And of course tabular and grid views. And then you can apply various filters to it, different types of timelines or facet type filtering. And when you do all this, let's go to the sample map actually. When you do all this, you get to a point where you can actually really dynamically explore your data set. So this is a data set that is looking at some travel around Italy mostly, and you can visualize like point-to-point information, and then you can actually go in and filter it on a timeline. So this is over the course of about a year and a half. And if I want to just look at travel that happened between March and May, I can just really quickly filter it down and see exactly the travel that happened at that point in time. So what a lot of researchers are actually using this for is as a tool to help them actually think through their data in a really dynamic and interactive way. That a lot of times other tools that are really great visualization tools don't allow you to do because they're more focused on kind of developing a static visualization, maybe for presentation purposes. And this is much more of a research tool. So we built this in Angular. I don't know if you can tell, but we're using a huge number of plugins, and it's built primarily on Angular, on D3.js, and on cross-filter behind the scenes, which is what drives, actually when I'm sharing through the Apple TV, you can't really see it, but there's dynamic changing of the visualization as you scroll through the data. So as you change your filters, the data changes, the data you're seeing changes in real time like you're doing now. So that's the basic idea. We can actually look a little bit at some of the back-end stuff if you guys are interested. What do you want to see? I don't know.
This is a question to do with Iconic.
It has nothing to do with Iconic, but since it's an Angular meetup, I thought it would be okay to present an Angular app.
When you say plugins, what do you mean by plugins? You said you're using a lot of plugins?
Yeah, we're using a lot of the Angular UI, a lot of the Angular UI
directives.
plugins.
Not
so,
jQuery plugins, just
no.
directives?
Well, a lot of the directives wrap jQuery plugins, so we're using like the jQuery drag and drop stuff, but that's wrapped in directives. the way we do that is, let me just pull this over. So the way we actually do that is by, on this one. So we pretty much just take, have a directive that we can apply to any element, and it just applies the jQuery draggable plugin onto that element. And then we have one for droppable, obviously, where you can drop that. So it's pretty straightforward. I mean, coming up, we're going to have like groups of things that can be dragged onto each other in different groups. So we're going to have another parameter of the directive to give it a group name. But it's pretty quick.
Can you show how draggable, for example, is used in the code?
Yeah, sure.
Just out of curiosity.
We've got a pretty hackish list view at the moment, which allows you to choose a something that you're going to list everything by, full name, for example, and then you can choose dimensions to list. Then you can choose dimensions to list along with that in kind of a spreadsheet type format. But you can see like this date dimension, it's like really taking up a lot of space. So like maybe I want to move it to the end, so I can do that over here. We're eventually going to allow you to do that just at the tops of the columns, but that's where the draggable and droppable shows up, and that actually lives under. So we have all these different components. We're actually developing this. This is kind of one implementation of a combination of these components, but each visualization and many of the kind of backend pieces are components that can be cobbled together into other applications. So we have a bunch of components, and this list view is one of them. Actually, I think. No, actually, it's one of the universal directives that we have, which is our dimension chooser. And yeah, this one actually implements its own directives for dragging and dropping, but they're actually the same thing. I just copied them out and then used them in a more general place. So I just haven't replaced them yet. On the Meetup group, I said this was a great example of building an Angular application that's pretty large, but when you have no idea what you're doing to start out with. And so we're doing a lot of this refactoring stuff kind of as we're moving along. So taking directives out of the individual files and putting them out in their own file is one of the things that I've been doing. So you can see that what happens here is we get this thing that pops up. The dimensions are actually this thing. I haven't been into this code for quite a while, but Palladio dimension, Palladio service.
I see Palladio draggable.
Yeah, there's draggable and droppable, but that's not the right thing. So there's a repeated thing somewhere. I think there's probably another template. I don't know, actually. This is a bad example. But it's one of those groups. Oh well. Yeah, we would have to probably like dive into the actual. We can do it here and find out where exactly it is. Except that there it is. So this is the. Oh, it's looking at the modal, table dimensions, data modal. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh well, I'm lost. I haven't looked at this particular like list view component for quite a while. So I'm out of my depth. Maybe just really quickly, our general approach of building these components is a little bit. We had some kind of issues around it because Angular wasn't really built to do this. So it was built to componentize applications clearly, but we want this to be a library that people can then embed and then embed these components. And so one of the things we ended up struggling with was the situation where we have a template URL, but you might be able to see that this path is actually not where the template lives. The template for this particular component actually lives right here. template.html. And the reason it lives here is that it actually doesn't matter where it lives, because we, as part of our build step, we actually take all of the templates in the gulp file, find them all here, and we use this Angular templates gulp plugin to just dump them all into the template cache that Angular has, so that under a specific name, so that there's no need to go back to the server to try to grab a template. And the reason is that we have no idea what path on the server the final application is going to end up at. It could be anywhere. And so it won't work to have a template URL. So for a while we were actually like embedding the template JavaScript as a string, or the template HTML as a string rather than directive, but now we're doing it this way, which is much, much better. So that was one thing we had to kind of overcome. Not particularly difficult once you know how to do it, but something we struggled with for a while, kind of slowed us down when we couldn't have these templates out in their own separate files. It was a bit of a mess. All right, so I just want to show that we're going to be, it's not currently open source, but we're going to be open sourcing it probably within a month or so. So if you want to see kind of what we're working on or how we did anything in particular, it should be on the GitHub site that you can get to from that website that I showed you, from this humanity design website. So that'll be the place to go to look. Yep.
Is there anything with the packaging and all that stuff? Is there anything preventing it from just being like a large module?
Not really, and that's probably where we're going. So I just finished like switching everything over to using Frawley and using essentially like, using the module system and actually having a bower.json file to do dependencies and stuff. We'll also support being a node module most likely, so we'll probably have two bundled versions of it, one with dependencies and one without. The idea will be that when you build a Palladio application, it is essentially going to look like this. So you'll pretty much define an index file, which just pulls in your Palladio.js file, which has all templates and directives and components in it. And then you'll define an app.js file, or whatever you want to call it, that pulls in whatever you need from the Palladio bundle, from the Palladio package, using the Angular module system. And then you'll have your own templates that you define, and you don't actually need to use any kind of, well, we're factoring this out, so you do actually have to have this workflow controller on one of your, if you have anything with loaded data. But other than that, you can pretty much just say, like, this is what I want to see from my visualizations. So you can have a Palladio palette, you can have a Palladio facet filter, you can have a Palladio table view, and then you provide a data file, and you'll just have a visualization of that data file.
So is there an actual backend, or does it just
There's
keep
no
that
back-
data file in the cache or something?
It's a front-end only application. So the data that you load in never actually goes to any server anywhere. It's only in the browser. So that
How does it save that between? Is it sort of like a single page application?
It's purely a single page application. So like I'm at this particular point in my view. Hopefully this will work. I can click the save button. I'll get a audio save file downloaded to my desktop. I can reload the app. I'm in the sample, so it auto loads itself. Let's go back to the regular one. And I should be able to just upload that file that I just downloaded. And it should dump me right into where I was. Just like that. So, yeah.
Have you had any memory issues with doing it this way?
Yeah, we have people who try to load. So we can deal with data sets that have several thousand rows without any problem, which is usually pretty much enough to satisfy most researchers in the humanities. We do have data sets that people want to use that have tens or hundreds of thousands of rows of data. It's actually interesting. It doesn't seem like you run into memory issues. It seems like you run into other problems with JavaScript library starting to run really slow before you run into memory issues. So if you do load enough data, you'll run out of memory, but other things break first. But we are able to handle fairly substantial, like smallish to medium-sized data sets without any problems. We're looking at going to a server-side component, but currently there are no client-server combinations that really libraries that support this type of interactive data exploration. So we're probably gonna have to build one, which is kind of cutting-edge research, not just in humanities-based data visualization, but in kind of data management in general. All ready?
There it is.
Great. Back to Netflix.
So I think Max is going to go next. Yeah, just again, there's seats free, so you don't have to stand in the back if you don't want.
No, be careful.
So there's
Like
Drifty, and the password is just Ionitron, or IONITRON.
Max, you're not supposed to be here today. What's going on?
Kind of last minute here, but let's see. Wait, it's a kitchen one, right? There we go. So yeah, so today I'm going to just do a quick demo of the Ionic Creator, more Ionic stuff, but this is a tool that we've been building that's a pretty large Angular app, and it's interesting for us because we've actually built similar tools to this. It's a drag and drop tool. So Codica.com was, I'm wearing the shirt, it was like our first product ever, and it's a drag and drop tool. It was meant for building jQuery mobile apps. We built that in jQuery and Backbone. So what I'm going to show you here in a second is basically a very similar product, but with Angular. And doing this was made us realize how much better Angular is in every single way. The quality of the end result was much higher. It was done faster, much more maintainable. Just everything's better. So I'm just going to log in here. So this is a full HTML5 app. Just running on a static server. So this is all a single page app. Not sure how this is going to work with the Apple TV, but the basic idea with the Ionic Creator is you can build Ionic apps without having code. At least prototype them to get started. So it's going to be really hard for me to hit that button. I need to switch my name.
It's impossible for me to do that. I tried.
Okay, there we go. Here. Cool. So I'm just going to go create a new project. So the basic idea is you have a mobile app, and you can basically drag a bunch of Ionic components to it. So if I want a card for my app, we'll just say info or whatever. I can drag in buttons. If you're familiar with Ionic, we have pretty much the whole component set available. So you can go and change different styles. You can change the text, oops, let's disable that. Change anything on the buttons, pretty much live. We support things like Markdown, so if you just wanted to put some content in here, you can type that. You have HTML output even though you're writing in Markdown. We've got tons of other components down here. And I mean, at its core, it's a simple drag and drop tool for building Ionic apps, like I mentioned. But the cool thing is, you can pretty much build a functional application, just dragging and dropping. Build a form, which is a pain for a lot of people. You can, add images. You can add spacers. So you just drag and drop the spacer in, and then you can adjust the space. A whole bunch of stuff. The other thing we have is we have a set of pre-made templates for different pages. So let's say I want to add a login screen. So I can add a ready-made login page. I can go back to my other page and I can link between it. Little bug there. Let me switch. Yeah? Did you try it? Oh, with Sept too?
No, yeah.
Okay.
Select stuff is really.
I'm trying to narrow it down. Just keep. Sometimes it'll work. We'll get lucky here. Ideally, you could go and test. You can basically test the app right there, and it will navigate. This is the first day it's ever actually been live. So let's try another page and see if it'll link. So made another login page. We'll link this to that login page. That stuff. So I can go and preview it, and I get nothing. I just want to show it because it's a cool effect. Alright. I'm going to start over with a new app, and I'm going to file a bug report. So yeah, you get a broken project. Okay. Just want to show you that effect because it's kind of when you do it, you're like, wow, it actually works. So link to the login page or not. That's good. This is good. It's reproducible. There we go. Yeah. Navigate it. So I mean, it's a lot more fluid on my screen, but this is basically the app navigation you'd have in your phone, which is really cool if I can just fix that one issue. So the cool thing with this is, so it's actually live. If you go to creator.ionic.io, you can play with it, although I don't necessarily recommend that right now. But what we can do is create a new project from the prototype we're building right now. So all we have to do is take the app ID, and if we click export, we get a little more help. And all we need to do is Ionic start my cool app, and then say it's from creator and the app ID. And it'll go and actually fetch that prototype. And in this case, it won't, because it's broken. But ideally, you'd be able to create a new project from that prototype. So what we're trying to do with Ionic Creator is basically make it easier for people to build and start Ionic projects without having to really code. We saw from our other products that people love building things visually, but sometimes have a hard time getting started. So we just want to make it easier to see all the components that are available, drag and drop them, build prototypes, show your team, and then when you're ready, get fully functional Ionic code, ideally, that would let you start from that template without having to code it from hand. So this might work. I just had to update. Do Ionic serve. Live debugging here, so bear with me. I do Ionic serve, I should get nothing. But it'll load up the app on the screen, and you'll be able to do it. So, yeah, so I guess from an architectural standpoint, we are using UI router. We don't have a lot of routing states, and actually like our I can show you like the routes are pretty minimal. We don't have a ton of different sections to the app. We have pretty minimal controllers. What we've done is just build a lot of like self-contained components and services that have given us a lot of mileage. So it's a lot of code. I can't really walk through it all of it right now. But you start with like a simple index file, like this, and this is the body tag here. It starts with UI view, loads the rest of the app. If you're not logged in, it logs you in, or shows the login page or the sign-up page. The cool thing is we're doing, we have an API server, and this is like a separate domain. So it was a little bit of a headache, but we were able to get, creator.ionic.io to work fine with the other API server, which is on a different domain, which was a pain in the ass, but we figured it out. So that's cool. All in all, it's about 10,000 lines of Angular, I'd say. So, yeah, I mean, that's all I have. If anyone has any questions.
What are you guys using Firebase for?
We're using our own backend, Python, Django.
Okay, so you're not.
Yeah.
There was some comment here.
We've been thinking about, we want to add like a real-time layer to it soon. And Firebase would be a great fit for that. So we'll have to see kind of when we get there. Right now it's just like one single user at a time.
And going from the designer here to the code, what's the code it creates? What does that look like?
So for the first version, so like this would be the index file. It's right now I jam them all into one page, but it's basically the Ionic components. Like this would be that page we just designed. This is the login page. So it's pretty much what you'd write by hand in Ionic. Then there's we set up like a navigation, a nav bar, a nav view, and set up routes so you can navigate between them. Pretty much the basic scaffolding of an app.
So how much logic can you embed in using? I mean, you've got the links.
Yeah.
So you plan on doing more than that?
We want to make the linking as the core thing, just to show the experience.
Yeah.
My co-founder Ben hates this, but you can actually there's an HTML tag, so you can do whatever you want. I don't always recommend it, but we'll mind stuff. Yeah.
But I mean more like application logic, like moving around.
Yeah, right now.
Unless you build the frame, and then you go into.
Yep. Right now, that's not a focus of the app. We've dabbled in that before, and we've kind of found that like we get to a stage where it's harder to implement that in a UI than it is just to code it by hand. So it's kind of intractable. We really want people to code. We're focusing on developers primarily, so we want to get them into coding as soon as possible. We just found like finding the UI, designing it has been like a big hurdle for people.
Yep.
So hopefully this will kind of cut through that. And then in the future, we'll expand probably to those other things.
So how do you do the WYSIWYG then, or the drag and drop?
Yeah.
That's
so
pretty cool.
we're using the HTML5 drag and drop API, which is pretty decent, and it works pretty well on other browsers. And the cool thing is it works on mobile. If this wanted to be mobile supported, which right now that's not part of the scope, but yeah, that would be cool. So if you're not familiar with the HTML5 drag and drop API, like we just set these components as draggable, and then you bring them over and like there's a hotspot here, and it's like okay, you can drop it, and then you get a bunch of events. It's actually it's a little wacky because like you'll get an event every like 20 milliseconds or so. I forget the interval, like saying oh I can drop here. So we just like detect that and find the position, and we'll show like a green arrow if you can drop it. But if you can't drop it, like you can't drop an input unless it's in the form, like you don't get anything.
Looks like you can drop it right.
Let's see what that is.
Edge condition.
That's not. So actually that I was pretty happy with that. I've used UI draggable and droppable, the jQuery UI stuff in the past, which works fine. But this one's faster and it's a little cleaner. And it works pretty well on all the browsers that I've tested, which is Chrome. Said that too. Yeah, any other questions?
How'd you guys make that the command line? You know, installing it from you just put in the ID, and is that like a node thing?
Yeah, we have a node tool, and that's what goes and fetches it from the server and starts up the project locally from. I already have like a server running, so this is something we need to fix. But yeah, that's basically what we want everyone to use when they're using Ionic, is use our npm tool, because you can do all this stuff. So we're really just trying to push people kind of into using that. Okay, there it works. So this is the app that I just built before I started modifying it, and I started a project right from there. So I could actually go and like, I could test this right on my phone. Oops. Or the simulator.
We might have an iOS or an Xcode 6 now.
Yeah, I just upgraded. Everything's broken. So.
Can you add icons to your list and stuff like that?
We do have. Yeah. I mean, we have all of our. So if you're not familiar with Ionicons, we made this big free icon pack. There's like 500 icons that Ben painstakingly handcrafted. And totally free, MIT license. So you can add a lot of these icons to certain parts of the app. I think right now I only support on the button. And even then I don't. So figure right. Somewhere it's in there. This is good for me. So ideally, yes. You could add every single one of those icons to something.
What about stylizing it if you wanted to stylize it?
So we have
theming
stuff coming soon. It's not quite ready. Like this is just version 0.1, probably 0.0.1, and so we don't have that yet, but we do have. There's a few theme tools the community has built too, and we're gonna try to like play it well together. Where you can go and pick like some of the, like we use Sass underneath, so it's really easy to just like pick a color and have a theme that you can build your app from. So that's coming eventually, as well as like changing the font. Because like the key to like a great app is picking a red font. So we want to help people do that. So yeah, if you want to play with it, creator.ionic.io, please don't share it too loudly because all our community's been waiting and you guys are the first to ever see it. So it's almost ready, but you're gonna get lots of nasty responses. Cool. Thank you.
Alright, so who's next? Yeah, alright. Yeah.
There's custom.
This is on Firefox.
So my name is Mike. I'm going to show off an app I've been building for my company, which builds kind of e-learning type things. So this in particular is a new product we're looking to launch in about a month, where it's kind of a platform to play kind of learning games for enterprise customers. So the typical end user for this app would be like a pharmaceutical salesman who has to kind of keep up with like new drugs that his company is selling. So his company would buy this app and then go in and load in a bunch of content specific to their industry into like a Rails backend. And then that end user the salesman can come in and kind of play these different games. So what we got for launch is two different games. One is a one-on-one multiple choice quiz game. Really similar to QuizUp if you've played that on your phone. The other is a one-player kind of flashcard, pretty simple memorization game. So there's I'll just kind of walk through, I guess, the different pages in the app, but there's kind of the main, pretty typical CRUD style app where you're just kind of, you've got your settings page and your history pages, just kind of different pages of list of things. So that's all pretty typical Angular stuff. We are using a UI router for the routing, and we're using a lot of resolves, which I've liked a lot. It's a way that you can kind of block rendering your views for things that are asynchronous. So for example, we actually have this very root state in our app, just called app, which will block kind of the page from being rendered until we fulfill all these things that we kind of need. And these are just stuff like you need a logged in user in your app, or basically all your controllers, they all kind of depend on a user object. So this is a pretty handy way to kind of lock your app from loading until you have this kind of necessary data. And that way you don't have to, in your controllers, deal with all kinds of promises and asynchronous data. It's just by the time your controller is called, it just passes in this data you need. And even with the user, we're able to hook it up to like an authentication system. So when the page loads, we send out kind of just an AJAX request to see if the user is authenticated. And if that comes back true, it sends us back this user object. And that's what we resolve our user data with, is just the kind of the first name, last name of your user, the image of your user. But if, say, your session was not authenticated as the server determined, this would actually reject because it's a promise. And we just have kind of a couple lines that listen for a failed resolve. And when it's rejected because the user's not authorized, we can just render the login page. So that's one kind of trick we've been pretty happy with. Let's see, so the app is also responsive. So the target will be kind of like tablets, but it's also designed so you can play it on your phone or on your desktop. And one kind of other trick that I've been really happy with is we've been using a lot of CSS flexbox layouts. So this week kind of ripped out a lot of styles we'd written before, where like on this guy we call these list items. There's a lot of those in the app. But before we had kind of 5 different media queries, and based on different sizes, position, top, right, these things differently, pattern a little differently, just to get stuff where they line up and don't overflow. But with Flexbox, with just like a handful of CSS properties, you can get pretty nice layouts here where, some things are fixed size, like these buttons and the icon on the left. But then you can just tell kind of this main area to flex, and it just takes up the remaining space. So that's actually a pretty big advantage over like Bootstrap's grid. The problems I've had with that in the past is you go full fluid. So you would kind of say, this is take up 7%, like a call 8 or whatever that is, and you would say this is a call 3, I want to make it small. But the problems I've had with that is as you get small, these buttons kind of keep shrinking, and then you get into problems where like this text would start wrapping or it'd start overflowing weird. With Flexbox, you can just have fixed parts mixed with fluid parts a lot easier. And you can also get vertical alignment, which is like historically really hard to do in CSS. That's just a one CSS property you add to your container. And so that gives us vertical alignment on the children. And you can also set flex wrap to wrap, so as it gets really small, it just wraps the buttons down there. And so you also have more control over like Bootstrap's grid over when things should break, where it seems like most of the time you just kind of use the defaults, like on a certain size, a span of 6 will break, but you don't always want that. Sometimes you, like it might break this icon onto a new line, but really with Flex you get a little bit more control. So yeah, I'll show you the games now. This first one is a little bit rough around the edges. This is the flashcard game. So this is something you would play just on your own. So it's a little hard to see, I think, with the screen size. But basically, on a normal size screen, you would see like a 3D stack of cards going off into the distance. And so you're just kind of working your way through this stack of cards. You kind of see there, so the front cards falls away when you answer it. You're just kind of working your way through.
Did you animate or?
Yeah, we're using CSS transforms, keyframe animations, which are actually, pretty easy to use in my opinion. Like here, all we're really doing is just, kind of rotating it and translating it to make it fall down. Some of it we hook into the NG like show events, but also some of the stuff like the background flashing. That's just kind of like I think an NG class we add onto the element, and that just through CSS hooks into the keyframe animation. So one other part of this game is like if you get a question wrong in the full screen, you'll see it gets like shuffled back into the deck. So you kind of have to go through until you get everyone right. We kind of have this little progress bar up top, which has some different animations. Those, as well as some kind of different layouts for if things have images or not. So this is kind of the rough aspect of it. That's just the summary screen when you're done. And then this other game is a one-on-one quiz game. So this is something you play against another person, which can either be you're playing with them live, or it can be kind of asynchronous where I can challenge somebody to this and I'll play through it now. And then the next time they log into the app, they'll see kind of a notification up here like this, where somebody challenged you, and then you can accept and you play through. And when both players are done, it kind of shows the results of that. So I'll show you this game, and it uses kind of like a mock opponent right now. So it'll look like I'm playing against somebody, but it's all just being done in the browser. So this also kind of simulates looking for an opponent, so it takes a few seconds. And then we're just going to go through, like, I think it's 8 rounds of multiple choice questions, where it's, unlike the other game, it's timed, and you can kind of see as the other person answered, they got it wrong. And then when both players answer, we show some kind of animations and show you the correct answer. So this AI opponent is just really simple logic, like after a random amount of time, he picks a random answer. So usually he gets it wrong. 25% of the time he gets it right, so that time he got it right. And then this bar is the same directive as from the other game, and we can use it in a couple other spots too. But that's something, how I like to structure the code as a lot of directives, just because it makes it a lot easier to reuse code down the line. Like building that flashcard game was really quick because I could just kind of reuse things I already built. Let's see, this is using a plugin like Pi Timer or something. So we're just hooking that up, and it's got a pretty smooth animation. A big part of the game is just kind of adding in those little nice little effects that just kind of make it feel more fun to play, I guess. And then so this is the end of the game. That's kind of a summary screen. really heavily modified after Quiz Up, if you've played that. But we're kind of just showing you who won. You win points for playing a game, and your little experience bar. Just kind of some actions, but then you can scroll down and kind of see some more detailed information about the game. So this is using, we're wrapping jQuery Flex slider for this, so it's just, I think, a pretty solid, responsive, like carousel plugin. And this is a part where, too, this whole game screen is a component. And, you know, the progress bar, there's components in here, but basically that's just lets us change it from kind of its dynamic in the game, but here in the summary, we just feed it static data, and it's just kind of easy to reuse. I think the only real work we have to do is just kind of tweak the styles a little bit because it's shown in a smaller space. And then this is another non-Angular piece. This is just a little E3 code to do kind of a lame little bar chart of throughout the rounds, like how many points you had and your opponent had. And that's just the same thing in table format. So I think another kind of neat part about the app, it's part of kind of the environment, is everything in the app is just running in the browser at this point. I started it that way because the backend team was kind of working on other projects at the company, so they weren't able to build out kind of all these endpoints for, you know, loading all this data. So it started out just kind of like in your controllers and services, just kind of a hard-coded list of here's all the person JSON, just kind of copy and paste, change some names. So that let us get pretty far, and this is still running without the backend because the backend team is still just kind of ramping up on this project. But it's kind of evolved over time where it all still hooks into the WebSockets layer too. So basically, in the app, I'll dive into the code a little bit, but it started out to where I would kind of have logic where it's like, you know, if I'm in development mode, return this mock data in line. If else make like an AJAX request to get the real data. So that kind of got me far for a while, but there are a couple things I didn't like about that approach. It felt like it was going to be really hard to separate out that logic once the backend was ready. And so we'd be shipping to production kind of the full mock data and all this other behavior. And I didn't want to do that. And it also just screwed up things like test coverage metrics, like because you've got all this extra mock data code in your real app code, it kind of said you had a lot of untested code. And also, I just wasn't really comfortable. I thought I missed things, miss an else statement, and suddenly in production you're loading dummy data. So I kind of, after a couple experiments, found a solution that works pretty good, where in our main page, this actually lives inside a Rails app, but this is the only really template Rails remembers, and it's similar to that Ionic App. It's 2 lines of code that just calls into Angular. But basically, we have 2 main Angular modules. We have Q, which is kind of the full app PC, and then we have QMock, which you can see here, we're only loading this QMock onto the page based on what environment you're in. So we would only load this in dev or demo environments, and it's something we could just turn off for production environments. And what that QMock module does, it's got a couple of pieces. One is just kind of this mock data builder. So this is a way, you know, we want a list of, 20 different people that looks interesting and has different data. So at some point I switched it from just being like a static JSON blob to just these little kind of builder functions, which if you're familiar with Rails, is kind of modeled after factory build. So you can call this and get kind of random data. It's really easy to build lists of things, so 20 people is what powers what you're seeing with the UI. And as far as kind of intercepting the calls on the client, what we're using is this Angular, from the Angular mock library. it's got an HTTP backend module that they've already built, and that just kind of lets you intercept your HTTP calls. So instead of actually sending a real AJAX request, you can just register handlers within your app and say when you see this route, serve back this data, or maybe run a little bit of logic and serve it back. So we do that, and we do a similar thing for the WebSocket layer. And then I kind of sprinkled some other stuff on there, like the ability to kind of configure, there should be a delay before you get the results. So that just feels a little better in the app. You can kind of tell your loading screens are working and that kind of stuff. And then I found from the UI router package, they have kind of this internal service called URL Matcher Factory. And basically that just is a way to kind of parse URL definitions with placeholders. So I use that down here, where like for people, all I'm doing is just kind of building this list of people and returning it, but some of these kind of have these dynamic parameters in them. And so I'm using that already existing service to it'll parse this out and stick that on a params object. So now you can kind of get somewhat realistic backend behavior, where if I click on a person, I should get their specific data back versus just returning random mock data. So it's been kind of interesting to do this approach because sometimes it feels like we're just kind of re-implementing what will be built in the backend later. But it's also been, once you kind of get it set up, it's been pretty simple. Like these are all one-liners where it just makes the app feel a little bit more realistic and lets you kind of do some more interesting dynamic things. It looks better for demos. So, like our CEO has been able to demo this app for a couple of months now without having a backend and able to like pitch it to clients and get some prospective sales. So, I think it's been a pretty big win from that perspective. And also, it's been pretty useful for testing. So, for unit tests and Angular tests, unit tests and tests, you want to kind of work with fixture data, but your test can get pretty big if you just repeat the same stuff over and over. So we're able to just kind of use this same builder service to build me a person and then pass that into your test, and now you've kind of dried up your test code a little. So I think that's about it. Oh, also another thing is that I've kind of done, as I've worked on kind of like animation projects and like heavy interactive stuff over the years, is to just make like a mock config file. So these are just a bunch of properties that, let's say we want to style that loading screen for the game. So like by default, it's going to take 4 seconds to load a game, but we can just come down here and tack on a couple zeros. So now it's just gonna sit here and wait. So there's other ways to do that. You could kind of set true inside ng-show or something, but it's just kind of nice to have it all in one file, especially if you're working with other people who are maybe doing the layout in the app. You can just kind of pull into this file, and now you can kind of go in and have a blast. And you can do stuff like limit the number of rounds in the quiz game. So maybe you want to test out that when the game is done, the game summary screen shows. So if you're kind of futzing around in that area, you get game to click through 8 times, so you can just kind of come in here and change the limit from basically unlimited to 1, and now we'll just see 1 question in game. So that's another tip. That's about it.
Can you show an example builder? You said you could build people and stuff.
Yeah. So this is person object. So it's got an ID property, and build ID is just kind of a typical, like it increments the ID every time that's called. So every object will have a unique ID. And then it just gets first name, which we're just pulling from just, where we just have, arrays of email and mail names, and then we just concat them and pick one out of there at random. So just every time we call this, we're getting random data. Yeah, and then for some of the stuff, so throughout the app, we also have, it kind of shows your level in all the topics, and that's actually using that same progress directly, just styled a little differently. But that would be a little bit bigger JSON structure, so like the user, for each of the topics, we kind of track what level they're at, what points they're at. So some of these mock data objects can be pretty big, but that's what powers that part of the UI.
So you couldn't find a plugin for creating fake data? You had to do your own?
Yeah, I mean, there is actually, I just saw today Faker.js is one, but I mean, it's pretty simple. Yeah. I mean, we use underscore, and so you can just pick things out in an array and it's pretty easy. But yeah, that would be, I saw that today and that looked kind of nice, because it also generates kind of these lorem pixel images and lorem some text and stuff, which would be nice. Any other questions? All right, thanks.
All right, so who else do we have? Okay. Yeah, you have one.
Set up okay, get back there actually.
Yeah, the next.
Let's go right in. Actually, let's go to the office. Oh yeah, okay, so alright. Oh, that's not gonna work.
It's so sad, for a long time, and yeah, I make a bunch of runs to
so actually end up speaking in
They have great beer, but it's no, I just moved there from there.
Yeah, in terms of the next one.
Sorry, you found no, Finnegan's. They donate to concentrated.
A lot of the beers just keep it fun, so I know it's really insulting here.
I know, sweet chocolate wine.
I like lemon tea. But I like Thanks so much.
Later turned out.
And you're closer to that.
It's been like, yeah, I've been bad.
Well, that's like a big person on this is what it is. Before like electricity, they have all the grain mills on the and so like General Mills, but it's fun to walk around.
Oh, it's fun.
It's a solar, it's solar cash cow.
Good bag. It's freezing on that.
Yeah, it should be.
There's like all different
Okay, guys. Good. Alright,
one last demo of that.
One more demo.
Okay, so after
Get off the floor for a while.
long run setting up display, I think we're good to go here. So give it a shot. So my name's Drew.
Do you mind speaking up so we can capture it in the
recording? Sure. My name's Drew. I'm a developer here at Drifty. I'm going to be showing off MadJS. It's a really small app that I've been building. So before jumping into it, I just wanted to kind of go over my background and why I'm building this, that sort of thing. So I've been a web developer for about like 3 or 4 years, and this is my first mobile application that I'm building. So it's a really good experience, and like overall I put in a pretty small amount of time. I think overall this app, like everything that I'm showing you today, was done in probably 40 to 50 hours. So I thought that was a huge deal for web developers like looking to get into mobile, because there's almost no barrier. So anyways, getting into this. So what is MadJS? So MadJS's a way to basically message your friends and share your location at the same time. It's, as you might guess, it's closely modeled after Snapchat, at least some of the UI aspects of it. But what I wanted to really solve was sharing my location was really difficult. Like when you send your like address in a text message to a friend, your options are pulling it up in a Google map, and it's like not cached, and you have to load a huge map. So that's it's no fun. It takes too long. So anyways, let's get into this. So what you see here, actually, the entire sign-up process and sign-in is powered by Firebase. And I'm mostly using Firebase for handling my messages, and all my backend data is on Firebase, which is pretty cool. But anyway, because Firebase just introduced this new off feature for sign-in, I have 100% of my application hosted on them. So no servers at all, which is pretty nice. Okay, so I'm just going to sign in here. Okay, so what you see right here are just all the friends I have added right now. So this app isn't, it's not live yet, so everything here is just fake data, but right here is, this entire list is done with Ionic lists and Ionic items, and it's actually really nice. Like I made myself like really popular, added like 5,000 friends, and surprisingly it didn't blow it down. So I was happy with that. But if you do happen to have like a really big list and you're using Ionic list, there's like ways to get around it. So you can basically slice down and say like, you want to target just a certain selection of the list. So okay, so from here I can message friends or add them. So you can just send a message and get into make our map. Okay, so Genymotion has random GPS. This thing that I just turned on, and pretty sure I'm in the middle of Russia right now. So, but you can see how this works. It's loading basically a static map, and you can just overlay your message on top of it. So yeah, I'm in Russia now. Okay, so right here, this is the message we just sent. We can go back and view it. And unlike Snapchat, these messages just persist forever. I didn't really see any reason for it to just last like 5 or 7 seconds. So this is sort of the main view where everything goes on, which isn't much. You just see messages that you sent, messages that you've received, and also friend requests. So those show up there. You can add people, and yeah, that's sort of the gist of it. So let's try this. I'm still going to show up in Russia, but in the future, one of the great things about using Firebase, I don't actually have these images stored in a database. So the only thing that I'm storing is the 2 coordinates. So that's actually pretty nice because if you use Snapchat and you're sending like a picture message from a device with a really small phone, or a device with a bad camera, and then you go to send it to someone who has like a high-res screen, like the picture quality is really bad. So it's nice because I can the map in the background, it's just pulling from Google Maps, and that way I can like obviously the perfect image size. So that's pretty nice. But other than that, I just wanted like a really simple way to share a message. Like one thing that I was working on was like group messaging, so you can ping like all your friends at once and say, here's where I'm at. Or also just, right now I don't have, there's no way to do like a one-tap messaging, so I'm working on like adding in, when you hold down on someone's name, it just goes straight to sending them a message. So, but overall, it's just kind of like a fun project, mainly just like learn Ionic, and I mean, I'm working on some of the framework now, so it's kind of like a chance to just be around dog food. I mean, here at Drifty, it's like important to, be able to put all the pieces together. So it was a really good experience though. I mean, like I said, coming from web development background, like 40 to 50 hours, never had any mobile experience. I think it's pretty exciting, like how quickly you can like move with HTML5, and it's not just like prototyping; it's like an actual app. So yeah, that's the gist of it. If you guys have any questions?
Yep. What does it look like when someone gets one of these messages? So kind of
yeah,
come up
so,
as a map with the message underneath, or?
Yeah, so I'm frozen up here. It should look exactly like the message that you're sending. So there's literally no difference. Like when you type in here, your messages will show up in the bottom. And yeah, so sent messages